churches with our students. And I know some of you were out here earlier today. Most of you were out here earlier today. But I want to let you know about some of the upcoming Institute events. We have 3 in the month of October. It's a little bit of a packed month. So first, we're on Monday, October 7th. We have Christmas in October. This is going to be a little bit of different form of institute. This is going to be a roundtable. Well, we have roundtables. This is going to be a roundtable discussion. If you are in ministry and you are planning for Christmas and don't know what you're doing yet, this is a present to you, because we're going to have several different people present what they're doing for Christmas, things they've done in the past that have really worked. It's just an idea generating session. If you've already got Christmas planned, God bless you, but next year's coming too, and you can get some ideas for that. We'll be sending out emails about that. There'll be links on the website as well, how you can sign up for that. Then on the 28th of October, we have Melissa McDonald, who's going to be out here. And I believe, I think we spelled it wrong. Oh, great. Okay, so we will fix that. But Melissa McDonald, she oversees, basically for the CMA, she oversees their children's ministry outreaches. And so she is going to be talking specifically to children's ministry people at 10 a.m. and then to everyone together at noon, on talking about how we can equip families to lead forward in the gospel together. And then we have a special event on the 30th of October. That's a Wednesday. Calvary Christian Church is going to be hosting this for us. And this is a depression in ministry workshop. And this is vitally important because pastors have a much higher level of dealing with depression than people who are in non-pastoral roles. And this is something that our own president here from Nebraska Christian College has studied extensively. And so Dr. Paul Alexander is going to lead us on that day. I'd really challenge you, whether you have battled with depression like I have, or whether you're someone who has never struggled with that, that's okay to come and to learn about how we can walk alongside of our brothers and sisters in Christ together. All right? All right, so I get our pleasure of introducing these, maybe the third best sneakers in the room today. I don't know. These are pretty sweet. So Sam Collier is our Institute speaker today. Sam has a great story about how you can look online about how he met his birth mom, actually on the Steve Harvey show. And man, I tell you what, we'd show the video, but I don't want to make him cry before he gets here to speak, because I know that that's something that's, man, it's such a cool story. Need to check that out. But Sam has done a lot of work with Northpoint down in Atlanta, and also with the reThink group, 2 leading church groups really that are helping to equip people with the gospel. And so Sam has done a tremendous amount of work as well in helping churches in the suburbs to understand the diversity that needs to exist. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that at the end as well. But I just want you to give a big Institute welcome to Sam Collier and his beautiful tennis shoes here. Show off them sneakers, man. They're sweet. Do they slide up?
Wow. I feel like I should have won the sneaker contest. I felt like, did you see? Let me see yours again. Put them up in the air. Let me see them. Wow. I should have won. Just kidding. Listen, just by show of hands, pastors in the room, church leaders in the room, students in the room. Okay, awesome. Let me I know you just stood up, but can we all stand just for a brief second? My hope today is that we would kind of have a family discussion. Is that all right? We'll have a family discussion today. And so what I'd love to do is just a quick exercise. And here's what I want you to do. On the count of 3, I want you to find one person. I know, don't get nervous. My introverts are like, what's happening? What's getting ready to go down? Just be a little brave for a second. Be courageous in the Lord. Find one person in the room that you don't know. On the count of 3. And I want you to ask them 3 questions. What's your name? Why are you here? And what's something weird about you that nobody knows? What's your name? Why are you here? What's something weird? We'll take 5 minutes and do this. 1, 2, 3, go. 2 more minutes, 2 minutes. Do you have a partner? You don't have a partner? Join this group. She needs a group. She needs a group. One minute. All right, 15 seconds. 15 seconds and then go back to your seat. 15 seconds and go back to your seat. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Sit down. All right, I'm coming down here. How much time do I have just to check? You got it. Okay, awesome. I don't want to go too long. 1:30, okay, awesome. 3 volunteers. I need you to be excited. I need you to scream. And I need you to have some energy. Don't be shy. You got to jump up. Okay, wait. You don't know what I'm asking yet. You got to jump up. Tell us who you talked to, what they said. And what's really important is that you highlight the weird thing about them. Okay? So 3 volunteers. Who wants to go first? You jump up. You got to scream so we can hear you.
Okay, I talked to Jake. He's from Emmanuel Fellowship. We both had like a hard time thinking of weird things about us. So I asked him about his tattoos. And we both got our first tattoo at age 16. So that was kind of weird about us.
Wow. Did it hurt? Did it hurt? Okay, somebody on this side. We got tattoos over here. You.
When he travels often, he sleeps like a homeless person. Gets out his sleeping bag. He has slept all over, just like in random yards and graveyards.
Who is
and
this?
Under bridges. Bob.
Bob
He works here.
sleeps randomly out in the yard?
Yes.
He's a professor here. That's what we do.
He's a professor. So the professors here sleep outside.
Yeah.
That's what I take away. All right, one more person, and it's got to be somebody of color. We got to mix it up. Come on, black people, I need you to, Hispanics, come on, don't let the white people have all the fun. We got to have some fun here. Well, you got to represent, all right? Well, it's more. It's like 5, 6, or 7. It's a good day. Hey.
Oh.
She's not ready. I think it's you. I think it's you. You already been on stage. Are you? She's nervous. Don't do it. Don't do her. Don't do her.
I'm talking about somebody else.
Who'd you talk to? What'd they say?
What is your name? Her right here. I talked to Melissa.
Okay.
Melissa is from here in Omaha, and her weird thing was she collects spoons.
She collects spoons.
And she doesn't eat off the spoons.
I think she is the winner. She collects spoons. How many spoons do you have? Come on, she's jittering. Come on, just give us a number.
Like 50 or 60.
50 or 60 spoons. Wow.
You're supposed to collect them.
You said you're supposed to?
Like you have them at the gas station, with the state on them or the country.
You collect spoons from the gas station? So like Quick Trip, you walk in.
Souvenir spoons.
Souvenirs. Okay. All right, give it up for Melissa. Give it up. You're the winner today. You're the winner. Spoon collector Melissa. I love it. Well, I wanted to start like that because as we kind of unpack this idea of what it means to live in a greater story, there's a concept. I've got a podcast called A Greater Story. And the concept of the podcast is that when your story connects to God's story, it leads to a greater story. And so as we dive into this thing today, I think to really do it well, you have to get a little bit personal. And so I wanted us to be comfortable with each other. Not saying you got to share your business with the person next to you. I'm not saying that. But my hope today is that we would be brave enough to be vulnerable with ourselves. That we'd be brave enough to be vulnerable with ourselves. It's an incredible room. We've got a great mix of pastors. So some of you have been in ministry for so long and you've done some incredible things and you're still going. We got people at the precipice or at the beginning of their ministry careers and you're in here just kind of learning. We're all learning together. We got folks right in the middle that want to figure it out. But I think the thing that binds us all, no matter where we are, is that we are always trying to be better. Right? And we're always trying to be everything that God's called us to be. I want to share some things with you today that transformed my ministry career. Being in Atlanta, Georgia, and being able to help a lot of different ministries and sit with a lot of leaders from Andy Stanley to Martin Luther King's daughter to I'm here in Nebraska, right? So I feel like I made it. I'm out here. I want to share with you a lot of the different lessons that I've learned, and it's just through some hard things. And so first thing I want to start with is this. Jeremiah is one of my favorite books, but specifically one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It really helped shape me. In fact, I feel like I was raised on this verse. I was mentored on this verse. And this verse was kind of the seed that helped to unlock some things on the inside of me as we started talking about and as I started to discover how to live in the greater story that God had prepared for me. Jeremiah is a young man, which many of you know. And what I love about the Old Testament is that obviously we're in a new covenant, right, within the New Testament. But what I love about the Old Testament is that we're able to learn about God in a different way. We're able to look and peer into other people's stories and see how God interacted with them and discover some things about how he desires to interact with us. Here God is talking to this young man, Jeremiah, and he says this, that the word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Woo, I'm getting excited already. It's great to have it. I grew up in the black church. You're just going to have to go with me. Is that all right? Just go with me. I'm already there. I got a lot of energy. I might do a backflip in the middle of the message. You just got to go with me. I'm from Atlanta in Nebraska. Okay. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Woo, what a powerful statement. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And then he says this, before you were born, I set you apart. Before you were formed, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Then he says, I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, look at what he says. He's young. I do not know how to speak. I'm too young. I'm too young. But the Lord said to me, do not say I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you. I will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. Woo! We could just stop right there. Bring the organ out. Altar call. There's a couple things that we learn from this story about us as we peer into it. And here's the three things. Do I have it? It's not up there. It's on my mind. Here's the first thing we learn, that God made us on purpose. God made us on purpose. Here's the second thing. Not only did he make us on purpose, he made us on purpose for a purpose. And not only did he make us on purpose for a purpose, but he made us on purpose for a purpose, and that purpose is great. He says to Jeremiah, Before you were formed, he made us on purpose. Before you were formed, I knew you. I mean, any mothers in the room? Mothers, you got kids. You got kids. You've been pregnant before. Okay, awesome. Right? What do they call it when you, what is it? The ultrasound. Is that what you call it when you see a baby? And the thing, many of us, we've been in ultrasound before, right? Before you were born. What God is saying to Jeremiah, what he's saying to us is that before you were even in there, I knew you. Before you could even be seen, I knew you. He said, in other words, I knew you. I made you on purpose. He said, and to Jeremiah, but before you, I knew you and I set you apart. Which means that before you were even formed, I set you apart. I put purpose on the inside of you. And then he gives Jeremiah an assignment. He says, I set you apart and boom, I ordain you prophet to the nation. I mean, before you even formed, he said, we had this conversation. In other words, for us today, and what he's saying to Jeremiah is, you matter and there's great things I have for you to do. But here's the big thing. And pastors know this because you're doing this. If it's not enough to read it, it's not enough for a preacher to say it or for anyone to say it to you. What makes the difference is if you believe it. And this is what I've seen. This is at every level of ministry. Because you could be pastoring a church for 20 years and forget that God put something great on the inside of you. You can get burnt out and you can say, I'm just up here and it's been whatever and my church ain't growing like it needs to. And this, and I spend a lot of time sitting with church leaders and with pastors that have lost the fire. They don't think God can do anything else great. He's done it all already. It's like, no, God, if you're still up there, you're still on the wall and God wants to get some great things out of you. I mean, we spend our lives communing with God and trying to unlock and live out that great thing and that great potential that he put on the inside of us. We spend our lives trying to get back to him and trying to live out the potential. He made us on purpose. He made us for a purpose, and that purpose is great. Well, we know what the purpose is. You may be saying, my purpose is great. What does that mean? Well, I mean, if you're in the room, you're already living for a great purpose. You know what your purpose is, and you know it's great. Jesus gave it to us. He says, I got to go, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to go and make disciples. I want you to spread the gospel of the kingdom. That's the greatest purpose you could ever have. Am I right? So we know that we're living and that we have a great purpose that God has already put on the inside of us and that we can live for. But here's the tension, and this is what I want to talk about today. If we know that we were made on purpose, for a purpose, and that purpose is great, then how come so many of us aren't living fully in that purpose? I mean, we've got churches and leadership conferences filled with leaders that are living below what God has put on the inside of them. And can I just take a second? It's a little bit of a difficult room to talk to because we're all in different seasons of life. But if I were to just take a moment and talk to the ones that are getting ready to go into ministry, that are interested in going, I would say this to you. I would say we've got a generation of young people, millennials and Gen Z, that are settling for average. They're settling for average. I can't tell you how many people I talk to, how many young people I talk to traveling around the country, college students, millennials, whatever, that want to do some great things. And they have all of these visions and God can use me to do this and he can use me to do this. And this is what I see. And they'll bring you the business plan and they'll write it out. But when it's time to actually do it, you see fear show up. And I'm like, well, what happened? I ain't seen you in 2 years. I thought you were going to do this. And then, oh, yeah, I'm working on it. Oh, yeah. And it's because they don't actually believe. They struggle with it. And so they live in this place. And maybe that's you in the room. Maybe if you're honest, you're going, I've not fully stepped into the thing that God has for me. I've been playing a little bit. I say I really believe it, but at 2 a.m., I doubt that God could do something great through me. If I were to talk to those that have been in ministry for a while, I'd say that we've got a generation of pastors, and I know this because I'm always in the room, and I said this earlier, that just burn out, given up, had some visions, plateaued, things didn't really go the way you thought it would go when it was supposed to go there. Or maybe you just find yourself hitting a brick wall. And you're going, what's next? And we stop dreaming and we stop taking risks. The church continues to go down and decline every single year. The statistics would say that millennials are leaving the church in droves. Why? Everybody can argue about why they're leaving. There's stats, there's this, but I just believe this, and we can talk about the stats later. I just believe that we've got a generation of pastors that have stopped running with the same passion that they had in the beginning. I mean, there was once a time, right, when you were so excited about ministry. They couldn't get you to sit down. You were taking risks. You were doing this. You were learning all of the things that you needed to learn, but somewhere you got stuck. And I see this as an issue happening all around our country and in our institutions. And so how do we solve it? Well, I'm excited. I wrote a book about it. It's called Find Your Voice. And it's dealing with leaders or future leaders that feel stuck, that want to get some things out of them, that feel like they're running into a brick wall. Find Your Voice is just about finding your lane, living in your purpose at the highest level. And so as we were studying this with Orange leaders and with Northpoint and all these other things, one of the things that we found is that many leaders get stuck and many believers get stuck in trying to live out the thing that God has called for them at the highest level, not because they're not playing offense as much as they're not playing defense. They're not playing defense. And so what I want to talk to you about to kind of jump into this book, there are 3 areas that we believe you have to play defense in if you're going to truly find your voice so that it can unlock the greater story that you're supposed to live in. And to undergird this, I want to talk about just kind of the power of influence. Because when we talk about playing defense, we're talking about, here it is, controlling the influence that's happening to you. We're talking about getting intentional about what's influencing you and what you don't allow to influence you. Can I just talk about how influence works for a second? Around age 16, I was playing 6 instruments. Any piano players in the room? Guitar, bass, xylophone, triangle? That should be everybody, right? At age 16, I was playing 6 instruments, and a song would come on the radio, and I could listen to it for 5 minutes and play it. And people used to ask me all the time, who taught you? What are the lessons who was your teacher? I said, I didn't have a teacher. They said, you didn't take lessons? I said, no. They said, well, how'd you learn how to play piano? I said, well, I went to a performing arts high school. I grew up in the black church. Everybody plays the piano. Right? I mean, every time I went down the hall, I turned the corner, it was a piano. And then another corner, it was a piano, and it was somebody playing the piano. And so then it got to the point where if you didn't play the piano, you were weird. And so it was just like, well, I guess we're playing the piano, right? And I would play the piano, and I just looked up after 2 or 3 years, and I could play. Here's what I want to say. There was never a moment I said to myself, I want to get intentional about playing the piano. It was just the atmosphere I was in. That's the power of influence. That whether you're trying to be influenced or not, it's always happening to you. We're all being influenced by something or someone, whether we like it or not, or whether we've gotten intentional about it or not. All I want to do today is say, as we get ready to play defense to unlock the greater story that's on the inside of us, we've got to get intentional about everything in our life that's influencing us and not influencing us. And so there are three influences that I think you have to get intentional about if you're going to unlock this greater story and if you're going to live out that great thing that God put on the inside of you before you were formed in your mother's womb. And here's the first one. Are you ready? It's about to get real. I'm just warning you. Here's the first one. Friends. Okay, let me stop. Let me stop for a second. Because many of you went, that's all. I mean, I get this everywhere I go. It's like, I build it up, and I'm like, all right, first one, friends. And they're like, okay. Is that what you came with? And I'm going, yes. Here's what I want you to do. Can you put your left hand in the air? And what I want you to do is reach across, grab the filter, and pull it back. Let's do it again. Left hand in the air, reach across, grab the filter, pull it back. I want you to hear this in a new way today. It's going to be simple, but I think if you'll do it, you'll see changes immediately in your life and in your ministry and in your development of ministry. Can I just be honest? Most leaders in the Christian space, and I'm giving you this from a research perspective. I spent a lot of time with white leaders, black leaders, Hispanic leaders, Asian leaders, megachurch leaders, small church leaders, one-person church leaders, right? And young people that want to be leaders. And I see we all get the same issue. Most leaders that want to be leaders or that are leaders now are not where they want to be because many of their friends suck. You said I could be real. You're like, what? No, seriously. Many of their friends have never been where they want to go. Can I give you a story? Most people don't know this. Some people know this. Some people don't believe it. But you know, a lot of the major Christian movements that have happened in our country, many of them came out of Northpoint. They're going, what? I'm like, yeah, most people don't know. You got Passion Conference. Anybody heard of Passion before? Louis Giglio. 40,000 college students at the Georgia Dome. They do Dallas. They do Atlanta. You got Orange. 2.5 million kids and teenagers every Sunday. 30,000 leaders in a conference. A 25-city tour. You got Big Stuff camps. You got Catalyst Conference. You got Northpoint. I mean, did you know all of them came out of the same church? I got to tell you the story. I don't talk about this story often, but I want to tell you because I want to talk to you about your friends. So Andy starts Northpoint, and Louis is his best friend. They grew up together. Reggie Joiner, who's the founder of Orange, starts Northpoint with him. Lanny Donahoe is Reggie's friend, and they all kind of start together. Northpoint comes alive. Reggie's running family ministry. Louis Giglio's running college ministry. Lanny Donahoe is helping high school ministry. And it blows up. Well, Reggie figures out through this thing how to help kids and teenagers. He turns it into a curriculum based on what they did at Northpoint and some other things, and it blows up. While that's going on, Louis is over here doing college ministry. Christian Stanfield, Chris Tomlin, David Crowder, nobody knew who they were. Nobody. Can you believe that? They were up the street in Atlanta singing with a couple thousand college students, and nobody knew who they were. There's some momentum that happens. Louis says, oh, this is going, hey, y'all come with me, let's go over here. It blows up. Reggie has his thing, Andy has this thing. They say, hey, you know what? Let's get with John Maxwell, let's start Catalyst. And they start Catalyst, and it blows up. And then Lanny's like, well, y'all doing that, I want to go have fun over here. I'm going to go start Big Stuff. 20,000, 30,000 high school students every summer and middle school students. And what was crazy about it is they all helped each other build it. So when Louis stepped over here, Andy would come and keynote at the conference. And then when Reggie was over here, he would invite Andy in when he had a new book. And then Lanny had his thing, and Reggie, they jumped. And it was, you were looking up, and I don't think people noticed it was happening at the time, but it was just out of this one seed came this extreme harvest of greatness that would impact the church for generations. And so you ask the question, well, what was the difference maker? They were just all friends. They were all friends, and they created an environment where greatness was inevitable. Are you with me? They created an environment where greatness was inevitable. Can I say it a different way? If you were not running after greatness, you felt uncomfortable in the circle. And so them doing anything great became inevitable because it was their friend group. Can I give you a statement? Our decisions are highly impacted by the words and beliefs of our friends. It's simple, but when you take it in the context of ministry, it changes everything. You want to be a phenomenal pastor and you want to grow your church? How many pastor friends do you have around you with bigger churches that have grown it? And here's a bigger question. How much time are you spending with them? Can I go a little deeper? It's going to be personal. Do you even care? Or have you just got to the point where you're like, I'm me, I can preach, it is what it is, God's with me. I don't need anybody. Because that's what we get. That's why I see leaders all the time. They hit a plateau, and I'm going, well, who have you invited into your circle? Who have you decided to be vulnerable with? What time are you sacrificing to actually invest in the ability to be innovative? And they're like, well, I mean, what we've been doing is fine. But the reality is, our decisions are impacted by the words of our friends. So whoever we're spending the most time with is really what's determining our current reality. Why? Because of this. Can I get psychological on you? Because of this. Our desire to fit in often outweighs our desire to stand out. Therefore, here's the statement. We become what the atmosphere of our friend group demands. Somebody's in the room going, no, I'm stronger than that. No, you're not stronger than that. Let me tell you why. Psychologists and counselors would say this, that we have been wired for connection. Would you agree? All of us have been wired for connection. Here's a deep statement. It's coming at you. It's coming hot. Because we're wired for connection, we will choose connection over progress. Every time. Why? Because God has wired us for connection. In other words, we would rather be connected and be mediocre than be disconnected and great. Woo! That was a good statement. Can I get? That was a big one. We would. Many of us would rather be connected but live in a mediocre and have a mediocre ministry, but have friends around us and people that support us and people that are breathing life into us and go, yeah, than we would being alone and great. So many of us settle for less just because it makes us feel good. And what I want you to do today, no matter where you are, if you're a college student, let's talk to the levels where if you're a college student, what I want you to do is to get intentional about who you're spending your time with. Are you spending time with those that are trying to achieve? Or are you spending time with those that just want to waste time? Can I ask you another question? What do the majority of your conversations sound like? If we were to get a camera and jump into your life and look at what you're doing in class and what you're doing outside and when you're going to lunch, what are you talking about? Are you talking about progress? Are you talking about Jesus and him doing something great through your life? Are you talking about studying? Are you going back and forth about the scriptures? Are you going, this is what we could do and look at what God could do? Or are you, what we going to eat today? I mean, I'm not talking about every now and, what are the majority of your conversations, what do they look like? And what is the circle that you've placed around us? Can I challenge you on a greater level? I'm just talking to college students for a second. Many of us will say, well, I don't know anybody great. Here's my question. What are you going to do about it? How much does it matter to you to be great? Would you drive 2 hours? Would you sign up for an e-course? Would you join a mastermind group? I don't have any money. Are you going to work? What I'm trying to get into, how much does it matter? How much are you willing to invest in your circle? Or does it not matter that much? Can I talk to our leaders? Would you be willing? I know we're busy. I know. And so I'm not at all coming down on busyness because you're running a church. I don't know if there's anything harder. You got crazy people every Sunday, right? It is what it is. Right? Somebody sending you an email about some song. You're like, okay. You're upset about that, right? That's your everyday. I know you're busy. You got family. You're trying to balance some things. But would you be willing to get a little bit uncomfortable for the sake of progress for a season? We're going to talk about diversity later, but as we talk through the different tenets that millennials love and value in the church, the ones that are actually going and the churches that are attracting millennials, we know the first thing is authenticity. The second is diversity. Why? Because the world has changed. When they pull up there, it's not an iPod anymore, but Apple Music, you go through the playlist, you got Justin Timberlake, you got Justin Bieber, you got Migos, you got, you know what, let me change, Hillsong. Let's just be real, right? They got hip hop to pop to art, and so that's their everyday. When they're looking at the television and they're seeing the commercials in real time, it's diverse. So what happens when they come in the church and don't see it? They're going, this is the statement. This is not relevant to my life. How is Jesus? This doesn't look like what my everyday. So now I'm jumping from an environment in a world that's diverse to something that's like a complete culture shock. And how could you? And they have a hard time figuring it out. Here's my question as we talk about friend groups. Are you willing to get a little bit uncomfortable to build a new circle? And not just white to black, black to white. Asian and Hispanic. We're going to talk later. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just asking what you're willing to do. Here's my bottom line, because I gotta go. Find friends that make you better. Find friends that make you better. I don't think I'm going to get to the last one because we got to do Q&A. We got to be out of here at 1:30. Can I talk about one more? Let's talk about leaders for a second. The last one is followers. If you want to understand the last one, buy the book, okay? Sorry, I didn't do that on purpose. I just ran out of time because I got really passionate about friends. Let's talk through leaders. You got to get intentional about your friend circle, and you got to get intentional about the leaders that you're allowing to speak into your life and the ones that you're hanging around. Can I give you an example? I'll give you one story. I get out of your way. We'll do some Q&A. I was at a 25,000 member African-American church for 8 years. Incredible. I had about 130 leaders underneath me, young adults down to middle school. We went through a scandal. We dropped from 25,000 to 3,000 in a year. It was extremely emotional. It was hard. And I stayed for about a year into that, and I kept leading through the scandal. Because my belief was, well, if God's going to keep the church open, I'll keep serving. There's still people, if people are still coming in from outside that need Jesus, I'm showing up. So that's how I led my ministries. I sat down and said, hey, we've lost our brand. We've lost the brand of our leader, but we still got Jesus. So if you want to be a part of that, let's go out there. Actually, if you're here for anything else, maybe that was the issue, right? So we went out there. After a year, the church model switched from a Jesus focus to a sustainability focus. When you have an arena that seats 20,000 to 30,000 people, your light bill is $17,000 a month. You got a money issue. And so I just decided, it's probably my time to leave, because all I had was Jesus, and there's some things getting in the way. And so I went and had a conversation with my leader, the one that I got saved under. I learned ministry under primarily. And I said, I think my season's come to an end. I've been spending some time in prayer. I feel like the Lord's shifting me. Been there 8 years, gave my life. And he said, well, I don't feel like the Lord's telling me that. I said, what? He said, well, you heard that from God, but I didn't hear that from God. I'm like, what does that mean? I thought I could go to God by myself. I didn't think I had to get your permission to do what God told me to do. And then we found ourselves in the Old Testament, and where the Lord told Samuel this and told Eli this, and I'm your leader, so. And I said, well, this is what I feel Lord and telling me to do. And you got to understand, I'm in an environment now that does not do the spiritual father thing. I don't know if you know anything about that. It's a charismatic thing. But it's a very deep thing if you're in it. It's your spiritual father, right? It's like very close to your earthly, the person fathering. So this is my spiritual father that I'm saying this, and we're having this moment. Gave my life to Christ underneath him. And I said, well, I got to do what I feel the Lord, you've raised me. And he said, you'll never be blessed again. You're out of order. The Lord's never going to bless you again. And it took me a year to believe in Jesus again. I had to get counseling. I had to have other leaders kind of help. And he was just hurt leaders, right? What am I saying? It took me a while to get over that, to the point to where it almost killed my mission and ministry. I almost gave up on it. You got to be intentional about your leaders. Because for me, I was able to bounce back because I had some leaders get around me. And I went through that. But I guess I want to ask the question, how many of you have been through some things from people that said that they would take care of you, that have damaged you and you've not bounced back? If you're going to find your voice, if you're going to live out the greater story that God has for you, then you've got to be about putting yourself under leaders that bring out the best in you and steward that influence well. Here's a statement I want to give you as we get ready to close. Our thoughts about ourselves and our futures are heavily influenced by our leaders. I just want to spend the last couple of seconds on this, 5 minutes, and I'm out of your way. I believe that maybe there's some people in the room today that are drowning under the weight of someone else's imperfection. There were some leaders you submitted yourself to. Maybe they called you dumb. Maybe they treated you like you weren't enough. Maybe they said you'll never accomplish this. Maybe they manipulated you theologically. Maybe they didn't take care of you. For some of you, it might be mom, it might be dad, it might be a pastor, it might be an old boss. Even for the pastors in the room, I love what T.D. Jakes says. He says, many of us lead while we bleed. We lead while we bleed. We're leading, but we're also bleeding at the same time. There's some things that happened to us along the way. We got cut up and we never sat down long enough to go, let me stitch myself back up again. And what I want to say is this: if you don't stitch yourself back up again, it'll damage your ability to be everything God wants you to be. It could be the very thing stopping you from reaching your full potential. That at one time you believed that you could do something, but someone came into your life that was an authority figure or someone that you allowed in your deep space that spoke some things over you that started to limit you, and you've never graduated from those words. Okay, for the college students in the room, I'd say, as you're matriculating through this system, you're going to encounter many roadblocks and mental blocks. And they're going to challenge what has been spoken over you or what has tried to tear you down. And I want to encourage you to do the work. Do the work of replacing the words of some damaged leaders with the words of God. Get deep into that space and let God renew your mind and tell you you're great again. And tell you you're capable and you are enough and you can do it. And greatness is possible and lives on the inside of you. In fact, that's a message for all of us, that if we would do our work, I believe the Lord, even in this moment, wants to let us know that he loves us and that he's for us and that he still has a lot for us to do and that he can do great things through us if we would believe again, if we would not be afraid, but if we be confident in his power, if we would let him heal the broken places in us from some leaders that didn't do what they were supposed to do, I think we'd accomplish the greater story. Buy the book for the rest. I wish I had another hour. We could have went well, but hopefully that was okay. Thank y'all.
So one of the things that really resonated with me as someone who's been in ministry for years, after I got through ministry, I went in one of the ministries I was in. I actually went to like a retreat center, and they actually talked about like spiritual abuse that often happens to leaders, the people in through leaders or whatever else. And I realized, man, like that's something. I think we got a lot of people here that have experienced that, or maybe it's just the letdown from like when you see like your parents, they have that influence in you, and then you see like this wall that your parents weren't able to break past. And yet through those times, our faith can become stronger, but it's got to be torn down and rebuilt on Christ. Talk to us just about when you went through that time. What were some things that built the foundation for your future? I really had to have some leaders. It was one leader in particular who had been through something similar through the same ministry, who called me almost every day for like a month and kind of put the stitches back in and helped me renew my mind in that area and go, hey, these words came from someone that was hurting. It's not true. It's not your identity. This is what God says about you. This is what you're able to do. And I had to hear it over and over and over again until I believed it again. And that was really hard. But he loved me back into belief. Then I had to have another, I would call spiritual mothers. I know there's debate on, women in leadership and in the church and all these other things. But, I believe in women leadership. I had I would call it a spiritual mother who came in and just mothered me. She literally would hug me, at times and say, this is how God feels about you. And it really just helped me disconnect my theology from a man to develop it on my own and connect it back to Christ. That no matter what organization I was in and how many organizations I matriculated through, that what they say about me or what they believe doesn't determine what I believe. So. That's cool. That's great. Let's shift gears a little bit. I'd love to stay there, but I know we need to move a little bit. Tell us about your experience in working to bring racial reconciliation to churches. I know we got some great examples in Omaha. We got a lot of students who are doing a lot of intercultural work right here in town. I think we got Jameson and Tyler who are co-leading a church together. That is a really cool model. Tell us just about what you've experienced there, what you're seeing happening in churches. That's all, just a little.
Okay.
Little
Okay, what level do you want? 1 through 5? Level 5?
We got a lot of overachievers here in Nebraska,
Okay.
so.
I would say, I'm gonna say a couple statements. I think foundationally, white churches are moving towards diversity faster than black churches. For reasons we can talk about later. I also would say that we've got an American Christianity problem in general with those that were raised in a certain history, that live out of that history, but don't see how the history has created the now. And so, long story short, I was at a 25,000 member black church, and then after about 2 or 3 years, I was at a 40,000 member majority white church, which I always say it like this: you've got the white church, the black church, the Hispanic church, the Asian church, and you got Northpoint. It's just on its own other island. And so for me, walking into that church, I had to learn a couple things. I had to learn white culture because I grew up in black culture my whole life. I had to learn white culture. Then I also had to learn, I'm going to say this word loosely. It's a overgeneralization, I think, but white theology. Then I had to learn Northpoint's unique design around reaching the unchurched. And so for me, it took me about 3 or 4 years to really learn and understand how to be relevant in a new space without losing my authenticity. And that took me a long time. It took me 4 years, but it was a lot of hard conversations. It was a lot of wrestling. It was a lot of arguments, fighting for my culture, because I realized that it would have been very easy for me to just become what the atmosphere was demanding.
So, I think that there's, in those situations, you can be so much give, and it feels like you're not getting any back. And yet, I think that that's the call of a leader, is that we have to go before people and show how that's done. And hopefully that reciprocates through other leaders. But how do you sustain yourself in the midst of those difficult times when it feels like you're giving so much, trying to learn other cultures?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm kind of known in our circles as, nobody's probably called me this publicly, but as kind of the whisperer. And so anytime a minority is looking to come into a lot of those worlds, they call me first, and then we have what I would call the black conversation. So it's a private conversation you have with minorities one-on-one, and the number one question is, all right, so what is this? Am I safe here? What am I up against? And the number one thing I say to every minority, especially African American, Hispanic, is don't enter into this work unless it's a calling. Because if you enter in it and it's not a calling, then you'll get frustrated very fast and you'll get hurt very fast because things won't move as fast as you want it to move. For a lot of reasons.
I think there's like an expectation factor, like going into it, you just have to say, this is a long work, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, if we pull the Band-Aid off a little bit, mm-hmm. I would say it's difficult, I think, for minorities to come into majority white spaces, predominantly because being different and being, if we use the word marginalized, has been our entire life. So we've been in that work for a long time. We've always had to change. We've always had to maneuver. You know, we've always had to, some people would say, code switch in certain environments so that we can be relevant. You know, I always, you know, when I got to Northpoint, my first inclination was to be white, was to speak white. And so when they told me just be yourself, I'm like, you're not saying that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm on stage going, hey, guys, we're excited. And they're like, why are you talking so white? And people were texting me, and I'm like, well, that's what you learn to do if you're going to be relevant in this new space, because you're kind of taught that your culture is not valued. It's viewed as less than. It's viewed as hood, ghetto, whatever it is. And so you start code switching so that you can be relevant in this new space. But I say all that to say we've had to do that our whole lives because that's America was built predominantly, for many years with white leaders still, I mean, in a lot of different spaces, in charge of setting certain things. So America started to be, it was formed in a way that accented the white experience. And then we just kind of came up under and just tried to find our way through so many different things. And so we've always had to maneuver. While now we're living in a world where you have a lot more, America's browning. So in the next, they predict 2040, which I think might be before, there will be no more majority in our country. And so we're being faced with the reality of diversity, whether we like it or not. And so now you've got churches that have been predominantly white for many years, minorities just matriculating in because they live down the street. It's like you're working at the power plant or you're at Coca-Cola or you're wherever, and then you just I go to the closest church, and then you walk in. And so now what I'm saying, this is really answering your first question and this question, is there are many churches now that are having to deal with the reality of diversity. It's becoming a necessity, not an option anymore. And so now, it's difficult for minorities to come into these spaces because many of my white friends and white counterparts are just at the beginning phase of understanding that there's a problem and that there has been a problem and we got to do something about it and so on and so forth. So the learning curve is very large. And so you spend a lot of time. That's why I say it has to be a calling, because you spend a lot of time being patient and having hard conversations out of love, which is really one of the only ways I believe to get it done. Now, I could go for an hour on this, but stop me. Now, I think there is room and there is a place for agitation. People would say Dr. King was three things. He was an agitator, he was a negotiator, he was a reconciler. But he was all three at the same time. And he would leverage agitation to get to the negotiation table so he could reconcile. And what we see happening in America today is that you either fall in one of the three categories. And usually if you're the agitator, you hate the reconciler. If you're the reconciler, you hate the negotiator. If you're a negotiator, you hate the agitator. Instead of understanding that we need all to actually make it happen. I'm going to say this in hopes I don't get in trouble, right? The whole Kaepernick situation, that was a form of agitation. But depending on where you sat in it, we recently had the whole Jay-Z situation happen where he's now working with the NFL and so on and so forth. And there's tension and there's disagreements all on the black side, on the white. Everybody's like, I don't know why he did that, Kaepernick, da-da-da. But what we actually are able to see in real time is you see this thing happening where Kaepernick, the focus of what he was trying to do was bring awareness to an issue. Now, many people didn't like how he brought awareness to the issue, which that could be debated about different strategies in different ways. So I get that. But the purpose of him kneeling was to create agitation to go, hey, here's this issue. And now Jay-Z's trying to come in and he's saying, well, now it's time for us to negotiate and come to the table so that we can change some things. Because if we stay in agitation land, nothing gets done. The whole purpose of it is so that we can negotiate. But here's where we lose most people in the reconciling process. We just want to be mad. right? Either, and I'm done after this because you got me on this. We lose a lot of people in the reconciling. If you're agitated, I just want to agitate and I just want to go, and then we go back into our corners. But Jesus has called us to reconcile. And if you're just a reconciler, there are a lot of, we now have a church in America that goes, we just want to reconcile. We just want to reconcile. We just want to reconcile. But we don't want to negotiate. We don't want to change. We just want to, I don't want to talk about the hard things. I don't want any agitation. Please, please. And so now you have people that just live on both sides. It's like, I just want to agitate or I just want to reconcile. But what I believe, Jesus is calling us to all of it. We have to have some agitation. And what agitation can look like is just having some hard conversations about the history of our country and about some areas that we're living in and some things that are existing already that need to change. We got to have some hard things, some hard combos. And then we got to negotiate and go, okay, well, how do we fix this? But then after it's all said and done, we got to do what they're doing and we got to reconcile. So that's why it's difficult.
That's good. No, that's great. That's great. Yeah, that's so you talked a lot about friendships, and I'll close with this. And I think that I grew up in a town of 1,250 people. 1,249 of us were Anglos. I went to college. Half my basketball team that I played with was non-white or non-American, like from a different culture, and it was this great experience to be forced into. We have choices to make about who we make friends with. Talk to us about the value of diverse friendships, and if there is a cost that's involved there, how we pay that cost. It's just a little question.
Okay. I am encouraged by the work that I see happening around the country. A lot of people are discouraged. I feel called to the work. So the lack of speed doesn't bother me as much. It is something that is very prevalent all the time in my mind, and that's something I'm like, let's speed it up. Also, I have to recognize the reality of where we are and how, human progress, so on and so forth. But I am very encouraged by the work that I see happening in churches, because what I find is that when you get, are we calling whites Anglos?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay,
I have no
okay.
idea.
When you find a white leader that wants to change some things, that gets it, that's going, we have a problem, and I feel the Lord calling us to help solve this issue, they always end up losing something. It's just, it is what it is. I had a young lady friend who was dating an African American. This is college students. This was like 2 years ago. And she brought him home to meet mom and dad. She was white. He was mixed. And when he left, her father said, you had one rule in the house: never bring a black man home. He said, if you bring a black man home, you'll be disowned. This is 2 years ago, maybe in 1.5. And she said, well, I'll be disowned then. They're still dating. It's a really small example of she had to lose something in order to stand up for something. Yeah, I'll say that.
That's great. Hey, I know we're running tight on time, so we need to go ahead and let you go for now. But you'll be hanging around afterwards a little bit here. And also at about, if you don't have class at 2 o'clock, we'll just be meeting in 201, or 301, right up back here, if you'd like to have some more time to talk with Sam. Let's thank him again for being here with us. Would you mind praying for us as you close?
Yeah, sure. Could we grab hands? Is that too old school? I'm going to touch your knee.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Lord, thank you for the work that's happening at Nebraska Christian College. Thank you for an environment in which we can have difficult conversations under your leadership and under your guidance and in your presence. God, I believe that if anyone is in this room, you ordained it. You did it on purpose. And I believe that there are many in the room now that are even being called to get outside of their comfort zone in many areas, with getting new friends, with picking the right leaders, with even doing something that maybe they've never done before, conquering fear. God, with taking on this mantle of reconciliation as it pertains to race so that our country can be everything that you want it to be. God, we know we've had some hard times, but our hope has always been in you and in love, that if we just run after love with everything we got, things would change. If we run after you, we'd find purpose and destiny and a greater belief. God, even as we're holding hands, let this be a symbol of what you want our world to be. Give us the faith and the belief and the confidence to run after you more than anything else, more than looking different, more than the fear of being alone, so that your kingdom could come in a greater way and be seen. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, thanks. Thanks again. We appreciate it.